This is absolutely the best clap that we've ever done in the history of anything that we've ever done. Welcome back, everybody. We're sitting down in the team room. It's Trent and myself today. Brought one of our good friends, Nate Gladdin, on. He's the proprietor, the owner, the operator, the mover, the shaker, the guy behind Inheriting Manhood. And we wanted to talk all things leadership, and not just leadership, because that horse has been absolutely beat to death. We want to talk about leadership 2.0, in line with that operator 2.0, and that in line with what it is that we need to be doing in today's environment, in today's tumultuous social justice warrior laden area that we have to navigate every single day with these new darn Gen Zs floating around. We really wanted to dive deep into that stuff and talk, like, no kidding, what are some things that you can do to be a good, effective leader? And what are some lessons that we've learned throughout our careers and then operating in that space as well? So Nate, man, thanks for coming on, dude. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. Like, it's an absolute honor, and I'm humbled to be here. Like, when you came on my podcast and then you were like, "Hey, come on." I was like, I think I sent both of you. I know I talked to you, but I think I sent Trent a message. I was like, I'm not real sure what I offer this, but I'll give it a go. I'll give it my best try.
Well, and you know, but like I said before we went on, you know, Inheriting Manhood, I was like, you know, I think you have something here. I listened to a couple episodes and I was getting ready, and it was funny to see you go, well, I don't know that I do have anything. And I was like, I don't know, man. I disagree. I think there's something there. Why did you start Inheriting Manhood?
Oh man. So that's an interesting thing, right? So the podcast itself, I started it because I genuinely wanted to have a way to vocalize the things I was thinking and communicate and everything else and give a platform, right? And I looked at it from I'll say this and then I'll split it and go back. So I coached sports. So, I mean, obviously Air Force, background, but I've coached middle school sports, high school sports, and college sports. Right. And so I've had a lot of, both men's sports and women's sports. And so I've had a lot of time with them. And, I'd always try to find that kid that was like, had the ability, but they were terrified to speak up. Right. Kind of the same thing. You get the guy that's in training or something like that. And he's like, if he just asked one more question, he'd actually, like, some things would fall in place and he'd be okay. Right. So,
but you're terrified because if you ask that question, I'm going to smoke you for it.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right. So that's kind of what it was. Right. And so I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to start this and talk about things that a lot of times guys don't want to ask, but they want to hear about. And so that's the whole thing. I was like, all right, I'll do it off of that. And the name of it, of course, like Inheriting Manhood, it's like, I waited a little too long into adulthood, if you will. Like, I kept waiting for the card to come in the mail and nobody sent the manhood card to me. So I was like, like maybe that's such a, yeah, I thought it was like, they just give me the card and then, that kind of thing. So
when do I start grilling out back in a pair of New Balances? Like when does somebody tell me that I'm a grown up? Because I got to be honest with you. I thought there were going to be like way more meetings that I was supposed to attend.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I thought there was like protocol courses and all kinds of other things. Right. And then they give me like the perfect pair of boots to wear and like all that stuff, like everything about it. But no, I didn't come. So I had to start something. So, and that's not to say like I'm doing something like all by myself and nobody else is doing. There's other people out there doing it. I'm just doing my version of it. Right. And I think the uniqueness, this was kind of the, part of it too, and this was something I was talking to my fiance about, like, whenever I was thinking about starting this, was, a lot of times people, they think that, you're an Air Force guy, or, you're this, or, you're that, or, you're in special operations, one of you kind of guys. Man, every single thing in your life must be fantastic and you must be so squared away and everything else. So I was like, you know what, if I get on here and like tell people like, hey, like 99.9% of the stuff I've done in my life, I've really botched it before I figured it out.
I have absolutely screwed it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of the overall arching thing of it. And I don't let any topic go off. I'm willing to talk about any topic. And that's kind of the thing I made a commitment to myself at the beginning. So.
Dang. Yeah. I mean, that you're kind of just jumping out there in the middle of some crazy topics, you know what I mean? Like just the fact that you call it Inheriting Manhood, it's like, okay, like you're asking for trouble. You're talking about failure and leadership.
Yeah. I've gotten a couple messages already. I've gotten a couple messages that ask me like, why did what's your deal? Why are you calling it this? What's wrong with this and everything? And I ask them like, I don't know. What about this offends you? I'm curious. Not like ha 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 or anything, like, hey, what offends you? And most of them are just like, I'm just curious. Is this only from them? Like, actually, no. Funny enough, I think a rather large percentage of my listeners are actually moms who are like single moms and moms that have sons that are trying to figure out how to get their sons help. and they're trying to give them a little bit of course direction. Like, I didn't expect that, but that's probably a decent a group of listeners. That's actually who messages me almost more than anybody else. That's who sends me messages. Our mom's like, hey, I've got a son, I don't know how to do this, and I'm just curious. And I'm like, well, neither do I, but I can help you with a little bit of it. Like, right. Listen to this. And so that's that kind of thing. So
I mean, because it's all just coaching, right? Whether it's in the military or outside the military, 100%. Or your parent, like you're just coaching these kids for success. And so, like, what are the problems that you see that you're trying to rectify? You know what I mean? Like, what is it about the current generation or our generation or whatever it is? Like, what are we trying to get after? And like, what's the goal? If, like I have, like my idea of what manhood is or adulthood is or leadership is, but like, what are we shooting for?
Yeah, see, that's the interesting thing, right? Like there is no cookie cutter answer, right? If so, they would send us the card in the mail and we'd have it, right? So that's kind of the thing, but they don't. And the way I see it, the way I look at it is like, so somebody like my age, right? Like I'm going to be 40 in a couple months, right? So I'm pushing 40, and I'm happy to say that I'm pushing 40, but I say if somebody my age, if they've made it to my age and they're still trying to figure some things out and they're still lost and everything else, a lot of times it's just like, you know what? All you need to do is just go back and you need to work on whatever those things are that you're hiding from when you were younger, right? That you don't want to admit. Like you got some things, and it can be nasty, right? Like it was for me. So with the younger generation, so much, and my fiance, she works with teens all the time. Like that's what she does for a living, right? She's dealing with like teen social skills, and she's trying to help them with all kinds of communication. She's dealing with resiliency. She's dealing with like mental stress, all that kind of stuff. And so I've dove in deep in with her, right? And so I see that, and a lot of high school kids coming out, they don't have those communication skills, right? They've lost those. We know that with this generation and stuff like that. But it's not because they're a bad group of kids. They didn't have the same style interactions that we do, right? So they're having to learn to do something that's been natural to us, and we're having to teach them something that's not natural to them. We didn't go through it, so we don't understand it. So it starts this process, right? And they're exposed to things like they are. Listen, when I tag somebody on Instagram, I feel very proud of myself. Like I have managed to make this work, and they're just like, "Oh, I've already done like 10 million things while you've done that one thing." Right. So like,
dude, so we maintain this online presence, and we do this thing. I went home, or, I went back to Albuquerque, and I was spending some time with my daughter, and my daughter was like, "Oh yeah, check this out on TikTok." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. How many followers you have?" She's like, "Oh, like 40,000. I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" I've struggled. I was like, "You have 10 times more followers than I do." It was hilarious. Like we made a reel, like I put just playing around on Instagram. I made a reel with my daughter about her like sharing some music with me. And I got done, and she was like, "Oh, Dad, you could have done these 4 or 5 things." She's like, "Good try, boomer." And I was like, "Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here." But inherent, I mean, like these kids, like we grew up in a weird generation, and we've talked about this before, but we really did bridge that gap. When we were younger, we were the only generation that really did. We went out and played. And when the lights came on, you came home. Yep. And sometimes you got in a fight with your friend. You told your mom and dad about it when you got back, and your dad would impart some wisdom, but you didn't come back home and get on your iPad. You weren't texting your friends. That's right. You got on your bike. But then we had that really weird middle space where all of those things became part of our lives. Like having this phone next to me right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Like the generation before us, they a lot of them still are like, they still have AOL email addresses, and they don't understand the interwebs, and they're like posting on Facebook, like, "Hey, Jen, good to see you today. Love grandma." Right. And then the generation after us, it's been a part of their entire lives the entire time. But we really are the only generation. We're in that middle, really the millennials, because it's the millennial generation is like 1979 to whatever, like to whatever, 1996, I think is what you are for a millennial. But the people that grew up in that space, we have had to learn, we have had to adapt to new things. And we really are sort of nostalgic for that older time. Because we know what it was like. And, you can't explain that to the younger generation now, because they're completely and totally on the other end of it.
They are. Well, you know what's funny? So I went through, and I think maybe I talked about this with you, Aaron. This was actually a big piece of why I started this also too, right? Like I came into the Air Force, and it's funny, like again, people assume that when you're in the Air Force, like, you know how this goes, right? Everybody goes to war. It's funny, I'm talking to guys that do, but like, everybody goes to war, everybody shoots guns, everybody has PTSD, everybody has this, everybody has that. Like, they have like this cookie cutter answer for everybody that's in the military, right? So they think these things, right? I would challenge that and say that one of the best things about the military, the Air Force, special operations, any version of any of it, is we are a conglomerate, a bag of misfit toys, right? So many of us come in and there's something we want to challenge ourselves, or we had something that was wrong when we were growing up and we think we can fix something about ourselves in a place where there's a lot of community and strength and honor and like warrior culture and all these other things, right? And so we come in, we're like, oh, this will fix us. Then you got to actually do the work when you get there, instead of just like, again, they don't just fix it, right? So there's that kind of thing. But I went through a course. I went through a course, and I told you this, Aaron, is a basic, right out of basic training. So these kids graduated basic training, and then like 2 weeks later started a course, right? And so I was sitting in a class with them, right? So I was essentially like, vetting this class, and so, but I was sitting in there as a master sergeant.
This is a crazy story. So like, I'm so glad that you're telling it on here as well, because I mean, I love, like, keep going. I'm glad I interrupted you there, but I love this story.
Yeah, no, it was shocking, right? So I sat there for 6-7 weeks, whatever it was, sat there with those kids every single day, listening to them talk, right? Watching them like be in absolute panic because they couldn't have their cell phone. They'd leave them in the dorms, right? They come and sit in a class. They don't have a cell phone, right? But these kids talking and trying to interact and like listen to them communicate. And I'm like, this doesn't process. Like, I don't understand what they're saying. Like, this is what the hell's going on right now? But then them also like asking me questions, like, oh, this and that. And like all these weird things they're asking me. And they were nervous about like how to communicate with me and everything else. Right. And then even teaching them the simple things like, hey, like, here's the deal. At the end of the day, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. But like, we're going to take the trash out. We're each going to take it. When it gets to me, I take the trash out the rest of this course. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no. These are just things that you need to like along the way, like do your part, do this, do that, communicate. They couldn't comprehend communication, right? Like open, like, I would just like, they would like lose their minds and I'd speak like, hey man, I'm a classmate right now. You are a grown-up. I'm a grown-up. We are going to act like grown-ups. This is how we as grown-ups communicate. And when somebody walks in,
being a grown-up even looks like.
Exactly.
I mean, and especially, and once you start looking at yourself a little bit, you're like, wait, do I know what a grown-up looks like?
Right.
Does my idea of a grown-up match their idea of a grown-up? Because it might not.
Mine didn't, yeah. Yeah, and mine didn't. Like when I came in, like I thought this was, basic gist, kind of what started me down this road was very early. So like my biological father was a bad man, right? Like he wasn't a good man at all. He was a drug addict and a drug dealer and an alcoholic, and he was abusive and all those things. So he was gone, but he walked out of my life early. And I got lucky. I got a hero mom who just is a badass. So she was, willing and able to move away from that so that I never had to endure it and everything else. Right. So she was awesome. But he left, he signed the papers so that he never had to see, speak, or know of me ever again. Right. So that messed with me as a kid. Right now, I was lucky to have another man come into my life. He taught hard, he, was a hard worker and everything else, but we never clicked. Like, so I always felt like, all right, I got to find some form of fatherhood everywhere else, right? And I would find that through all kinds of things. I found it through sports, but then I also found it through like the local neighborhood like gang, of just like knucklehead kids, right? Hanging out, like, let's go fight and let's go do this and let's go do drugs and let's go do all these things. And so like I found it kind of through that. Then whenever I was a teenager, when I was in my middle school years, like that time frame, like that middle, like those weird years of teenagers when you're transitioning and like you really don't know what the hell's going on in your life.
You're literally trying to figure out who you are as a person every single day. People talk about going, oh, I wish I could go back to high school. Get the fuck out of here.
You can keep that shit. I ain't got no time for that. People are stupid. Like you can keep that. I ain't trying to go back.
Anything before 25, homie, me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good. Like you can hang out any other generation. Like I'm good. But yeah, so during that same time, I was working like like a church camp during the summer, and I went through being molested by a camp counselor. Right. And so at the same time that I'm trying to figure out what, like, I'm like every other boy at that age, like trying to figure out who I am, that happened. So pretty much like all the way through that time frame, like I just couldn't really, I didn't know how to trust. I was like, there's no worth, there's no values, nothing. Right. I was like, but I'm, so I worked originally I wanted to go in the Navy. I didn't go in the Navy. The recruiter was a jerk. So I waited a little bit and then I went in the Air Force. So, but I got in the Air Force and I was like, this will fix everything. Right. So like I got in
Right.
and it was like, wow, this is a group of hardworking people. They want me to work hard. They'll reward me with this. They want me to do this. I'll do that. Okay, cool. And so I started to do those things. But what I was purposely doing, but I didn't realize it necessarily. I guess I kind of did, but was right. So all the things that happened never really happened. I don't really have to worry about those because now I'm here and I'm good. And so now I'm all right. And so I pretty much progressed for I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody at all about being molested for almost right at 2 decades. And so it just ate at me, right? And so like I loved all the guys I'd work with. I'd work with everybody. Like if I were on a team with you guys, like I would absolutely give every ounce that I had to you because I'd be like, this is the one group of humans I can trust. And so I'd give you everything I had. But at just the split second turn of a dial of any kind of like pushback, I would go to defensive and I was ready to go. Like, if you like to fight, I'd love to fight. Like, let's do this. Like, so I just wasn't really, there was like something missing. And so then I did the whole, like we've all seen, like I did the whole come back from deployment. X was, having an affair, the whole nine. And that sparked the thing, right? She was pregnant with another man's child. And I look back and I like, that was like the thing that started it, but it wasn't, it was a big thing, but all it did was it sent me down the spiral of, oh, these are all the bad things that happened when I was a child, and it just resurfaced. And from
that
there,
keg was already full of gunpowder. That was just the fuse, right?
Yeah,
like you've been filling up that thing with gunpowder your whole life. It's just chilling there. It's there. It scares you. Then that fuse lights it.
Absolutely.
Happen.
Absolutely. And that kind of sent me over the edge. And that, I'd already struggled. I talk about this on the podcast, and I talk about this with people I work with if they ask, and I do talk about it with fellow military members and stuff, like probably around the halfway point of my military career is the first time I ever like decided I was going to commit suicide. Right. And I've talked about that. It was because of traffic. Like I was pulling off base and I was trying to get on the road to go home. And I was like, it's too much traffic. I ain't dealing with this anymore. I'm done with this life. And I just was like, I'm going to check into a hotel, take everything I can find, and I'm going to bed. Like I'm done. And I tried, and luckily I failed. And I spent all night doing the whole like vomiting and hallucinating and like sweating and just like, I don't know how I survived, but I did kind of thing. And I went to work the next day like nothing happened. And that happened multiple times.
I mean,
like
I'll tell you, I've never been so happy to hear about a failure in my life. This is it's a weird thing. Like the universe is very weird for me lately, because I literally I deployed with a helicopter pilot. The helicopter pilot reached out to me through Onesready and was just like, hey man, it's Teddy, you want to catch up this week? And he told a story that was eerily similar to yours. To where he was actually able to get back on flight status. He's actually the first pilot to ever get back on flight status. And he's an awesome dude, and he's crushing it now. He made 05. He's working at the Pentagon, but it was the same exact thing for him, kind of like a trigger that, just like Trent said, that powder keg was already loaded and filled to the brim, whether you want to realize it or accept it or not. The military is good at some things. Like institutionally, they teach you how to be like, okay, this sucks, but we're moving on now. This sucks, but we're moving on now. They're really, really bad. Like that breeds people to go, oh, well, today sucked. I'm going to go home and I'm going to get drunk. Tomorrow I'm going to come back and I'm going to punch a clock and I'm going back to work. But you can't repress those things. Like you're just filling that powder keg up. So you told a couple of powerful vignettes there. And I just want to say, like, I'm glad that you're here today.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I am the luckiest person ever. Like, best friend reaching out, he's a load master on the 130, and, in my prior life of 130 time, he was a load master. He was always there every day calling, family was there and stuff like that. They helped me out. Like they worked with me and they worked through things, and they were freaking amazing to have around. And then obviously people that I worked with, like I got lucky. I was in the right squadron at the right time to have a group of people that were like, yep, no, we can work through this, and then to help me out. And that's just, I'm lucky. And so, yeah, all of that really led to Inheriting Manhood, but it led there in a weird way, right? Like it just led there. And so that's why I talk about it now. Like I just, it's every single time I hit record and I talk about something like that, it makes me so freaking nervous to talk about it. But then after I talk about it, I'm like, man, I hope somebody gets something from that. So it's like this weird thing where like, until I say it, it just terrifies me. The minute I say it, I'm like, this is the right thing to say. Like so it's this weird thing.
Yeah, but I think it's important for people to understand, like when we talk about certain things, like you talk about combat or losing people or going through those tough times afterwards when you've been ignoring this stuff for a really long time and it comes back, is, at least for me, there's always a positive that comes out on the other side.
Always.
And that positive always leads back to the importance of the people around you, right? And the people are the most important thing. And I think everybody that goes through that, or a lot of us that go through it, and you see it based on the podcast and everything that everybody's doing out there right now, is we tend to circle back and be like, hey, I want to help people, because what I've learned through these experiences is people are the only thing that matter. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And having the right people. So, you know, like everybody's
people.
always like, there's always a positive if you make it through it, at least to me. And as long as you have the right mindset and maybe someone else that has been there before to help you through it and see it for what it is.
Yeah. Oh, and I think, Aaron, I don't know if I told you, but like whenever I had basically decided, at the end of it. So I essentially, a couple of years ago, it's been 3 years ago now, I'm terrible with remembering this. Anyways, 3 years ago now, is when I don't think she can hear me. So, but that's when I met my fiance. But I met her.
You're not getting any of that good credit. Say it louder.
I met the love of my life.
Exactly.
I met the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. This is terrible. No, it's because we just flipped into a new year. I want to blame it on that. So, but no. So I honestly, like I was done. I had it set up. So I met her on a Monday. I believe it was a Monday. I met her on a Monday. Either way, I met her 5 days before I intended on like killing myself, and I had it figured out. Like I had the whole thing planned, how to make sure it was done. Everything is good. I'd said all my goodbyes without people knowing it. Like I had done everything exactly, and it just took months, and I had it calculated down to a science and exactly what I was going to do. And then I met her, and then we were talking, and I kind of like made some comments about some things, and it wasn't like anything drastic, but it was just enough for her to ask like questions. And we were talking, I was like, yeah, I went through this, but no, whatever. Like, but and then she just said, you just want to be a martyr the rest of your life? And then like all she had to say was that.
How'd that fit your ego? How'd that work into your plan?
Oh, that was like somebody reaching back and just slapping me in the mouth immediately, right? But it was that thing. It was like, that was it. That was the thing where I was just like, well, okay. And so that completely changed my entire life, right? Like it shifted. I didn't think I'd ever see her again because she was in town in DC on vacation. She's Australian. So she was like there on vacation, and we met, and then I thought she was going back to Australia. I'd never see her again. So, like life plays itself out in a crazy way. But yeah, that was that moment where I was just like, okay, yeah, so I can stop this victim card. That's a joke. Like I got to toss this to the side and start being a man about these things, and then working and breaking that down emotionally, mentally, like all of it, and like go through every single thing one at a time and work on all of them. And that's what I started doing.
Well, and that's kind of exactly where we are now. We talk a lot about, we call it operator 2.0. It's not a new term, but it's really manhood 2.0, because what you just said there is you said, I needed to figure out how to be a man about this thing. 40 years ago, what that would mean is you shut up, you repress your feelings. On the outside, you look like everything is fine. You take care of business, and you never talk about these things, right? That is not healthy. We see that it's killing men. Like that is literally killing men. Like that operator 2.0 or that next evolution of manhood is kind of where we are now, right? Like you need to be able to, we need to take the stigma away from seeking out mental health. We need to normalize men being able to call their friends and go, hey man, I am really screwed up right now. Like I am in a bad place, and we need to talk about it.
100%.
And that's kind of where we're moving to now. So especially with you, talking about manhood 2.0 or figuring that out, how have you incorporated that into your leadership style?
Oh man, I tell you what, like it's modified me, because I've like, by doing this, I have to hold myself accountable. And that's the number one thing, right? Like I have to, I got to check my ego. I got to be humble. I have to be accountable. I have to put these things in. But one of the big things is like before I could always teach, I could teach guys or girls like how to do the job, right? I could teach this, I could teach that. Hey, we're going to work hard today. Like what's the commander saying? The commander's saying this is the commander's intent. Cool. We're going to implement that. Awesome. This is our training program. This is how we're going to actively go down range. This is what we're going to do here. This is awesome. Like, let's just put it in and teach them. And like through hard work, they'll learn this, and through instruction, they'll learn this. and doing all those things, right? And I think like that portion of leadership, I had enough good leaders to teach me in order to feel like I could keep that rolling. And then over the last couple of years, what I've really started to focus on, I cared about the people, but I started paying attention and started like asking them questions and digging into the emotional side. I don't need you to tell me all your dirty little secrets of life, but I want to make sure that you're on the right path. So if I can tell that something's wrong with this person, hey, what's wrong? Nothing. No, something's wrong. You don't have to talk to me, but we got to get there, right? So we got to work on this because and then I explained to him, like, look, we have a training program to teach you your job. We have this to teach you this, and you have that to teach you this. Guess what? We can figure this out to make sure this portion of whatever's going on in your life, we can fix this. There is a way to address this. And so I try to work on it from that standpoint, right? Like if I can try to get through to them, be empathetic, but if I can try to get through to them and communicate, like, hey, listen, what do you want? You want this or you want that? And sometimes it's not even like emotional stress, or it's not like they're going through like something traumatic in life necessarily. They just want like, they're an up and coming staff sergeant who's a hard charger who does not know how to communicate to the higher rank. Right. Gotcha. Okay. You know why? Because you're so worried about getting your point across, right? Now, is that ego or is that because there's something stressing you? What is going on? Let's break that down. Let's get inside of it. Let's really talk our way through this, figure it out. What's going on? What's the circumstance that happens that makes you have that emotional reaction? That kind of thing. And so that's what I try to focus on now on the leadership side to really try to get them to that next level.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the problems with the digital generation, right? I know this is what I used to tell everybody at prep is the conflict resolution skills are not there. And if you don't have those skills, then you have an emotional response. Like the first fist fight you ever get into, you remember how high your heart rate got and how emotional it was for you and how crazy it was. But the 10th fist fight that you get into, like you're just solving some business with a boy, and that you're probably going to be homies on the other side of it, or friends. Do the kids still say homies? I don't know.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Roll them with the homies.
But it's just like that, though, right? Like, so like the first time you go to leadership where you're so worried about everything and you have all these emotional ties to what you think the real world is going to be like, but you've never gone through that resolution process.
Yep.
Like you're going to have all those feelings. You go through that process 10, 20 times. And eventually you're just walking to people's offices being like, hey, I have an idea. They're like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. You're like, cool. Like,
it was totally
like
worth
maybe
asking.
it was a dumb idea. And then like, you rethink it and you go again. But I think
maybe you're the one that's being
problems.
dumb,
Well, that's the accountability piece is
yeah.
Like maybe I am not as smart as I think I am, or maybe I need 100%. To think about this more, or I'm missing data. So
yeah. Another part of the conflict resolution too is, the Gen Zs or the people that have grown up kind of in this internet world. Like if you even think about how people interact now, you're not talking to somebody's face 90% of the time. You don't have that accountability of being in the same room with somebody. You don't have that tone and that inflection. People are so used now to just being like, oh no, somebody's wrong on the internet, and they're just typing furiously, but that's one way. That's exactly just right. You. That's you uninterrupted, just throwing your opinion at somebody. You never ask if they're ready for it. You never ask if they're having a bad day. You don't care about that. Like that's not, people need to get that feedback. We need to show people, like, part of the conflict resolution that I see with, young staff sergeants, especially in our kind of, corner of the world, is that not only are they, young and they may not have had that, they've grown up in the digital world where, they're sitting on anonymous meme pages all day, and the dark humor is inundating their lives. Like, I mean, there's jokes about suicide and all kinds of stuff. And the second that, God forbid anybody does anything meme worthy on the internet, like they're the first people to just be like, bam, bam, bam. You would never do that in real life. You would never, right. I say it all the time. I try to conduct myself online the exact same way that I would talk to somebody at a bar, which completely people, I'll exchange DMs that'll, they're like, oh, I don't know why you're so mad. I'm like, I'm not mad. I would be telling you, like, this is dumb. You're stupid, and I'm not going to tolerate it. They're like, oh, you're mad, bro. You're mad, bro. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you, you're dumb. And if we were in the same space, I'd look at you in the face. I go, you're dumb, because I understand there may be a penalty on the back end of that, and I'm willing to work through this conflict. And, and the younger generation, especially for us, not only are they in that space, but they're also hyper competent, which is a really, really hard thing. Like to lead somebody that is accomplished, they made it through a pipeline that 90% of the people in the world can't. And then to get on a team and get a deployment under their belt, now they're ready to lead. They just think that everything is okay. Well, I just have to be number one at everything, and then poof, people are going to follow me. Correct. And it's a big shock to a lot of the people that we lead. We're like, hey, homie, you have no idea. Oh yeah, how do you get a hold of military one source if one of your guys is having relationship problems? And they're like, what? They're just supposed to come to work and work. They're like, no, man, that ain't it, homie. Like you have a whole lot on the back end that you're not paying attention to and that you're completely blind to as a leader.
It's huge. It's huge for them to understand that. That's the whole like, this is like, what's the circumstance that happened? This happened. Okay. What's the emotion you're getting from it? What's your reaction to it? Right. Like you get to choose the reaction. You won't actually get to choose necessarily the emotion you feel, right? Like if something happens bad, you're going to feel a negative thing that automatically comes to us, right? We're wired a certain way. It's okay. Like you can have a negative thought. It's that take that quick breath, the quick detachment and go, how am I going to react to this? Right. And that over and over and over again needs to happen. Right. Because what happens so many times is like this happened and I'm competent. Like you said, I'm competent and I know what we're going to do. We're going to do this. Congratulations. That's what you're going to do. Is that what's best for the team? Is that what's best for the scenario? That's
grade school.
Right.
Yeah. Fixing that problem is grade school. That college, that Jedi master is pulling people through it in the healthiest way possible.
100%. It is huge. I think about what you guys do. Right. And so obviously I've never been through, like your pipelines that you have like full through a full pipeline, right? I've never gone through this. I've never gone through that or whatever. Right. But I look at it and I think like, I try to, I was thinking about this earlier, actually. I was at the gym and I was thinking about it. I was like, this is, maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll help for somebody that's listening or whatever. If I go back to when I joined the military, I was 20 years old, 20. Yeah. Cause it was a couple of years. So I was 20 years old, right? I had played sports my whole life. I was in very good shape. I was healthy, right? Like I was very, very healthy coming through. Physically, prior to all the stress inoculation, all the other things, if you just said, hey, I need you to do these things every day physically, I honestly think I could have, right? Like I could have done the physical things. Now, all of a sudden you add, now I'm exhausted. Now there's stress. Now there's somebody talking to me. Now there's doing all these other things. I would have a massive problem that would have failed on the emotional side, right? Which is where a lot of your guys fail, right? Now, take that back. Now, almost 40 years old. If you told me I had to go through a pipeline and do all the physical things right now, I'd be like, well, listen, I'm going to give it my best, but if you'll have the ambulance ready, because I've had multiple surgeries, I know exactly where my body's going to snap off. So if you could have them ready, I'd be appreciative. But emotionally, I genuinely believe now I could make it through that course in the sense of like, right, okay, what are they doing? They're trying to teach me something. What are they trying to teach me right now? They're trying to teach me this, or they're trying to teach me that skill, or you know what? They're testing me to make sure that I'm mentally capable and emotionally ready. So like I could break that thing down now, right? But I didn't have, like the guys that make it through your course, they have enough to get through in both ways, right? But then once they come through, it's like, oh, and this is fantastic. And then like you said, now you got to add all the other things to it, right? So, but I think of it like that. Like those are two different things. Like physically being able to do something is one thing. And then you add that emotional piece is the stress that changes the whole damn game. Same thing on the other side, right? Like I'm not an idiot. Like I could, like, I don't know, like I get on my Air Force PT test, I get like a 99 every year. Like, what, okay, that's great, but that's not stress induced. I know exactly what I'm going to do every year. Right. So like, okay, cool. Like my body can handle that, but I couldn't fast rope right now. I couldn't jump out of an airplane right now. I mean, I could, like I've jumped out, I've been able to, I've actually done skydiving and stuff like that and had a blast with it. Right. But I also wouldn't go out and like I dropped guys at Benning, as a 130 guy for years. I can assure you my body would not handle that many jumps in 1 week. It'd be done.
Neither does mine.
Yeah. So, but like but you know what I'm saying? Like you break those two things down. So to be physically awesome at something is great, but to be emotionally intelligent enough to handle your own self and the scenario and other people, that's a whole different level of things that you have to work towards.
And well, I think when we talk about that, one of the misconceptions I think of people when they get to the pipeline or when they see how we treat students in the beginning is if I have a student and I say something to them, they have an obvious emotional reaction to something I said about their haircut or the way they look or anything like that. From the outside looking in, they're like, this dude is just being I'm just being a jerk because I keep going after that person about that same thing over and over and over again. But I'm not trying to I have nothing to prove to that kid. I don't care that he looks a certain way.
Yeah.
But I want that person to get past thinking that any of that stuff is important or that it matters in the least bit, right? Like I'm going to ride you on the things that don't matter until you figure out that those things do not matter at all.
That's right.
And I think getting that perspective, right? And then them understanding that they can control the way that they react to it, and then understanding that the team doesn't care about the way they look, or nobody's sitting there judging you or whatever. That's the key.
Yeah.
I love it. We're talking about leadership, and Trent's children need something. That's a perfect example.
That's exactly what that is. That's exactly the perfect thing.
But he brings up a good point. It's like, when we see those emotional reactions, especially as instructors, but I do the same thing. I just do it in a different way now that I'm a flight chief. I'll see guys, or, as our flight room is actually like, I have my myself and the two O's on the team sit in the kind of like the back room. And you can obviously hear everything that's going on in the team room, but you'll hear it in a guy's voice where, a guy will make fun of him and he kind of responds emotionally. And that, to me, it's the same thing. When I was an instructor, I was like, oh, you're sensitive about that. Okay, well, I'm not going to do it in a mean way or in a hazing way, but I am going to pull that string because I want to know what kind of person you are. I want to know I want to know like how it is that you respond when you don't like it. Cause you know what? You're going to be like, it's hard to explain, but you're going to have intimate personal relationships with the people on your team. I have shared a room with a dude for an entire deployment, 4 months. Not only did we work together, we went home and we stayed in a trailer together. And my guys, when we were in Afghanistan, there were 5 guys in a room. So not only did they work together 12 on, 12 off for 4 months, but then they went home and there was no break.
That's right.
And if you don't pull back those layers and you don't open up that onion and really get intrusive and understand who you are as a person, you're going to fail. And your character is way more important than your competence. I can fix competence. I can't fix character. If your character, if you're a low character individual, there's nothing that I can do. I can give you all the trust and guidance and mentorship and tips and tricks and tools that I've taken through my, more than 19-year career now. And I can try to help you, but I can't make you be a better person unless you are, if you're, I could teach you how to be a PJ, Nate, like that. I'll tell you straight up. I could teach you how to be a PJ. I could teach any 18-year-old how to be a PJ. It's not that hard. Well, what is hard is like trying to tell somebody, hey, you can't interact with people like that because they'll hate you. And it doesn't matter how competent you are. They'll just ignore what you have to say.
That's right. Well, and that's huge, right? Like you think about that, right? Like from the, you could, teach me to be a PJ, right? That's why I said what I said earlier, right? Like when I was young, physically, I felt like I could have done it. The minute you had have added the emotional, I would have been done. I'd have been dusted. I'd have been toast. Not like yell and scream at me, right? But the minute you would have given me a problem and singled me out, like, oh, you may not be competent enough it would have started playing that little hellacious game right in my head.
The negative self-talk creeps
and
up.
It's funny, like we do that in the flying world too, right? Like, I was in, instructor and all that for a very long time. And, it was how I was taught. And so I was that way. I was a big believer, like, listen, while you're a student, like you will get 0 breaks from me. 0. You will get like, I'm going to make sure that every single day as you walk in this building, the minute you see me, you're like, why him? Why now? Why does he have to be here on this earth? And I want that to happen. And
everybody has that instructor.
That's it. And then exactly. Because then the minute they're done and they get their, they get their check ride, in the flying world called a check ride. So their final ride, they basically go, hey, you're good to go, shake their hand and go, hey, listen, you're just like me now, right? So like if you ever on the road, you need a problem, this is a different world we're living in now. You go ahead, you just reach out. I'm here. Here's my, like no big deal whatsoever, no judgment. Like it's like an immediate flip switch, right? But to do that, but what's funny is I would always do that. But then I loved going out on the flight line for one of the flights. So I would sit in the classroom with them for 8 hours and I would just like, all right, get your books out. All your books are laid out. Cool. And this generation has iPads, right? So I'd be like, here's the deal. You can use an iPad, but I'm going to grab it occasionally. If I tap that search bar and I see that you've searched anything in here, you're done. Like your day's over. Like I'm going to you can find this the old school way, flip pages. So they had to have paper copies out of all their pubs, a diagram of a C-130 all laid out across a table, whatever they got to have and figure out all the different systems and stuff, all this difference. And I'd go through it and I would just nonstop, just over like I'm going to melt your brain. I'm going to melt your brain. I'm going to melt your brain. The minute we go to the airplane, cool, calm, collected, relaxed, chill, give them a little bit and just watch how it unsettles them. And then I'm like, hey man, this is you. You fly, as a flight engineer, you fly one at a time on this airplane. You're the only one. So, do your thing. And I'm just going to sit here and just watch. And then I would, get after I needed to and different things like that. But for the most part, just to watch how it would just throw them, right? And I just keep them like that the whole time. The minute they were done and everything was, everything with their pre-flight was done and we were getting ready to go take off, at that point, I never bothered them on that. Like, unless they were messing up, nope, because now it's big boy time. Go fly the airplane. I'm here to just monitor and just to give them that time, right? But like, it's a process, right? It's a process. And it's the same thing in adulthood, same thing in manhood. It's the same thing in your job, same thing in my job, same thing in any job, it's the same thing in any scenario. It's coaching. It's like finding the thing that messes with the person and fixing that thing, and then like, oh, that's a strength. Good. Let me tell you that's a strength for you so you can keep working on it, but you'll be able to lean on it when you need to. But then these are the things we got to work on and like get you to where you need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're trying to set people up for is that moment where you have to make the decision, or you are 100% responsible for success or failure, life or death, any of that other thing. It's like becoming a parent and not having anybody to reach out to ask questions to, right? Like that feeling of responsibility, that's what we're preparing you for. And there's no worse feeling than when like someone comes up to you and they're like, you have to make a call right now, yes or no, or what are you doing? Like, you have to decide between these two things. And knowing that the consequences are incredibly dire if you make the wrong decision. But then when you make the right decision in that situation, you realize that everything that you've done up to that moment was preparing you for that time where you looked at all the data, you made the right call, you did the right thing, and things have turned out correctly. So, and there's no space in that for like an emotional breakdown or anything like that. And and I think that leads over into leadership, right? Like, you have to make that decision. Like, things are on the line, and preparing people to become those leaders, to make those decisions. It's a difficult process. And I wanted to lean into something a little bit real quick while we still have a little bit of time. Why? I'm going to ask you a question. Why is Dick Winters the greatest military leader that ever lived?
That's a great question. Dick Winters, the best one that ever. I think that's funny. I actually the other day I was thinking about. There's a book called Beyond Brothers, and I was like, oh, I put that on my list. I got to read that in 2021. I was like, that's going to be my list, and it's the diary of I can't believe I forgot his name, but you just said it anyways. But yeah, so
Dick Winters.
But yeah, exactly. But it's his diaries basically, like through that, right? And so I need to put that on the list and read it. But he's amazing because he genuinely cared about his people all the way through, man. Like, every little thing he did, he was making decisions. He was being decisive. That's a whole nother thing, right? Like, I think that is a massive piece. Be decisive. But even if you're wrong, be decisive. But that said, like, every single step of the way, his men. Like, every single thing you hear about, it's over and over and over again. And it's that. And I think that's huge. Like, it's everything in our world, but just in general.
Well, and he had one of the best quotes of all time. It was in Band of Brothers, but it was one of the entire, series, of the entire talk. I remember it distinctly, and it's something that I really connected to. And it's one of those things, you always steal little pieces and parts. Like, nobody is their own true organic leader, right? Like, right. Maybe Dick Winters was the prototype, right? But he had things that he loved and that he hated, that he took from people that he saw. Like, hey, this guy did this really well. This guy did this really poorly. I'm going to do this. I'm never going to do that. But the conversation, if you'll remember, Dick Winters is driving in the Jeep in Band of Brothers. And this is an actual conversation he had with one of his subordinates. And they were talking about gambling with the men. And they said, hey, man, you can't be gambling with the men. And he looked at me and he goes, well, it helps me with camaraderie and it really endears me to the men. And he goes, what if you win? You can never take anything from these men. And that quote to me always, it's one of those things that just echoes in my head, is you can never, ever take from the men. Some of the best leadership and mentorship that I got, I was at a training, pre-deployment training in like 2015. Huge FMP. It was in North Carolina. We had tier 1 operators that were contracted part of the course. And I was the team leader, and I'd been a team leader for a little bit. And I was pretty, set in my ways, and I have my own style. And he's like, hey, your style is your style. He's like, you're very directive. You're very clear. He's like, but I want you to add a little bit of nuance. He goes, just try this out. Next time that you're directive with someone, give them what you need. Like, give them, okay, I need you to be ready in 5 minutes. We're going to go here. He was like, that's perfect. That's good mission type orders. He's like, but do me a favor. Ask them what they need after that and watch how it changes the way that you interact. So now, I took that to heart, and I got to be honest, that is one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. And it's right along the line of Dick Winters. You can 100% be directive. You can be sort of that gruff, salty, old senior NCO type, but adding just the nuance of going, looking at my young medics and going, hey, dude, you need to fix that problem. I need him wrapped up and ready to go in 5 minutes. And then I take a step back in my head and I go, okay, man, what do you need? Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised. Like, they look at you and they go, oh man, I need another set of hands. Something that they would never tell me. Like, if I just bark that order out at those dudes are going to do it. That's what the dudes do. The sled dogs go. You point them in a direction, or you say, follow me, and they go. But if you just that little nuance of going, hey, what do you need? Man, I need 2 more people to make this happen on that timeline. They would have never asked me for that beforehand. I always thought that was great. But the Dick Winters quote of, what if you win? You can never take from these men. That was always something that I just 100%. It's like I get chills kind of just thinking about it, because that is that is the prototype for, senior NCO 2.0, operator 2.0.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. You talk about learning from other people. You take a little bit, like my project, my project for the first 3 months of this year. So I read every year. I try to read as much as I can. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know. I love to read. I love to read. So basically narrowed down from all the books I read last year. And I was like, all right, these are 11 books that go across different things. Some is on emotional, the emotional side of the house. Some's on tactical leadership stuff. Some was on the different things. So these 11 books, and I'm going to sit down over the next 3 months, and I started working on it. And I'm building an outline, right? And I'm basically going to go in, pull 3 to 5 quotes or passages from those books that those people wrote. And I'm going to look at that. And then I'm just going to expand on it from the enlisted perspective, right? And I'm just going to go, all right, from the enlisted perspective and the senior NCO level, what does this mean to me? What am I taking? These are military officers. These are civilian people. These are whatever. Like, what does this mean in my world from my perspective? And build that. And then I'm going to write out what I believe that is, right? And build an entire manual. It's a manual, not a manual. It's going to be a pamphlet. I don't know what the hell it's going to be called, but like,
call it a manflet.
Ooh, that's great. Like a manflet. I like that. Exactly. But I'm going to build that, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make that my thing, is I'm going to build that out, and then I'm going to have that, and I'm going to like make it look nice. And I'm going to, if somebody wants it, cool, man, I'll print out one for you. Here you go. You can have one. You can have one. And it's not an answer to everything, but it's like, hey, these are the things I learned from these people, and this is going to help me be better as a man, and better as a, as a leader, and better as an, a senior enlisted member of, the Air Force. Like, so that's kind of my thing, right? So like, I'm like, all right, this is what I'll do. And that's just for me, right? For me to get better, because I know that like, I don't have all the answers. Like I don't even have remotely close to all the answers. But,
so, hey, do you feel like the senior NCO leadership in the Air Force is as strong as it could be?
Absolutely not. 150,000% no. And neither is the officer corps, right? And I don't mind.
What about you, Trent? What's up, Big Daddy?
I'm not sure I should say. I have a few more weeks before I cash in on the last stripe before. Yeah. It could always be better, right?
Yeah.
No matter what. And I think as you go through a career, and I've been coming up on, like 17 years now, 17 coming up on 18, you have some incredible examples, and then you have some not so great examples. And I think one of the problems is we tend to value education and those type of things, but what we don't tell people is to internalize it and put it through their own personality and take ownership over these concepts instead of just regurgitating these concepts. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, it's an art, and people treat it like it's science all the time. Right. They're like, oh, well, I've got this cert, now I'm a leader, and I'm not going to internalize anything I learned. I'm just going to do those things. Like,
yeah,
right. Like if all you care about is making the next stripe, that's fine. Just be open and honest about it, and people will respect you for that. Or at least I personally respect the honesty and the authenticity. But I don't want to hear quotes from books that I've also read spat back in my face like that's actual leadership. That's not leadership. That's exactly regurgitation.
That's
my
exactly
issue.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's mine too. I look at it. So it's funny. I look at the officer corps, I look at the enlisted corps, and I just know that we could do a lot better, right? Like the one thing that I would love to do, like if somebody said, hey, you could go take a course, I've put in for it a couple of times. I would love to do it, but I would really like to go to Quantico or somewhere else and go through like the Marine Corps senior NCO course, right? Like their senior NCO course. Like I'd like to do that, right? And I think they do a great job. I just think there's something there. I think from a development and leadership standpoint, we have to get better. The senior NCO core, a lot of times in our jobs, right? A lot of times by the time you make it to the senior enlisted core, you're almost like, holy shit, I made it. Like, huh? Because you've been in the weeds, right? You've been in the weeds working.
What now?
Yeah. So you've been in the weeds working and doing the job. So all of a sudden you make it and you're kind of like, so I'm here now, and I wasn't expecting that. So
I had a mentor. I had a mentor of mine that told me, he was like, "Congratulations, you're them now. You're not us anymore.
Yeah,
You're
that's
them."
it.
And I was
You know
just
what
like,
I tell the commanders?
Yo.
You know what I tell this is so twisted, but every single time somebody makes full bird colonel, and I like, or if they make squadron commander, but especially if they make full bird, everybody goes to the line, congratulations, sir, congratulations, sir. So I no kidding, this is what I say every single time. I go, congratulations, and I'm making the rank where you can get fired for anything I do, and I just walk off, and I just let that like click, and then like they'll come back later and they'll be like, hey, dude, I can't. I'm like, listen, sir, like it's no joke. It's sad and it's not right. But I say that on purpose. Like I say it because it's like you should be there. And the whole reason why I do that is because sorry if I'm rambling, but the whole reason
why we
had
you on, Nate.
Well, I appreciate it.
We wanted you to. It's a podcast. We want you to ramble, homie.
No, it's so what's really funny is so like I got to, so when I first came in, I was when I first came through, I was a crew chief on the 130, and then I swapped over, became a flight engineer. So but whenever you do that, so I had the opportunity to go be on deployments and stuff like that and be like kind of the lead crew chief and be a flying crew chief and be this and be that and a couple other maintainers with me, but other enlisted guys, right, that I'm working with, and they are they're doing, I don't want to say like doing what I say, but really it's like, let's get the job done. But when it comes down to it, I went through SEER, right? Like we all go through SEER, right? There's some version of SEER or whatever. So I went through SEER, and whenever I was there, I remember it was the college football national championship game many, many years ago. I don't know, over a day. I don't know, a long time ago. Anyways, so that night, the game was going. So there were 4 officers and there were 4 enlisted in our class. And so the officers that were in charge, obviously there's one, they're like, hey, when did you graduate? And, you sewed on your, your lieutenant stride or your lieutenant bar. So you're the guy in charge. That game was going on, and it was right before the game was about to start. And for anybody that's ever been out there that understands, there's like that little, assuming there's the bar on the SEER side where like the guys that are in training can go hang out and have a beer and have a burger. So the game was on that night. So the lieutenants all walked in and like, hey, you know what, Sergeant Gladdin? Because I was a staff sergeant at the time whenever I went through my flying training. So they were like, hey, you know what, all these things, because you're getting ready to go to the field, right? So all the little baggies, you got to have all this ready, you got to have all this ready, all the equipment, everything. Final night, make sure everything's squared away. And the lieutenants go, hey, you know what? Hey, Sergeant, you got all this. You know what needs to be happening, right? And I was like, yeah, we got all this stuff. And he's like, cool, sounds good. All right. And they bailed, all 4 of them. They bailed. They didn't work on anything. They're like, make sure you get all our stuff will be squared away. And I was like, cool, sounds good. Whatever. I was like, all right. So they left. And I have 3 brand new airmen right now. So this was a weird thing. So these 3 brand new airmen, they're like, hey, they just left. Like, I was like, hey, you know what? They did that. That's all right. We got to stay ahead in the game. We got to keep all the stuff ready, because if we don't have it ready tomorrow, it's going to really suck, because it's freaking February. It's going to be miserable. We have to get this stuff done. Terrible. So, and I was not looking forward to that. So we got it all done. We do our thing. The next morning, our instructor walks in and goes, all right, here we go. Do us a favor. Sergeant Gladdin, you're in charge. And I was like, cool, sounds good. Okay, what are we doing? Me and the E's. And he goes, nope. All 4 of you lieutenants, you've all been demoted. You are now listening to Sergeant Gladdin. And the one lieutenant is like, that's not how this works. And he's like, that's exactly how this works. And he goes, last night, all 4 of you went to the bar and drank and ate food, and you left your airmen there to take care of the job. You're in charge. And so we went to the field, and they had me in charge. And for me, I was like, this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, this ain't how this is supposed to go. Like, I don't know what's,
Turns out that's awkward, exactly how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, right. But it was an awkward scenario, right? And that was just in a training. It wasn't like in a real world environment. It was in a training environment. But I was like, oh no. But that one little thing, like that was a huge moment for me where I was like, so if something does happen or some scenario does play itself out, there could be something where I don't have it. Because again, I've been in maintenance. There's always somebody high up that tells you what to do. So I was like, so there could be some scenario where all of a sudden I kind of have to take charge of this. And interesting. That was a real big thing for me to shift, right? It was huge. Like just that little thing where I was like, okay, so I need to actually know what I'm doing here and be ready, because somebody may not always tell me what to do. And that was huge because up to that point in the Air Force, somebody was always telling me what to do, right? Always. Like in the maintenance world, it's like, hey, this person, they're going to tell you what to do. That person, they're going to tell that person what to do, like up the chain, no problem. And so that was a huge thing to be like, all right, like lead up, lead down, like you be ready at all times. And so that really, I got lucky there because I think that one little thing helped me prepare to have to ever be in a leadership position at some point, to like always be ready for it.
Yeah, it's like being in a helicopter that's getting shot at. You start looking around like, hey, if we go down, yeah, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, sorry guys.
It's a bunch of strangers. It's like, yeah, I'm taking this one.
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
Man, that feels like a good place to wrap it up. Nate, thanks for coming on, man. I think we're gonna get this in the content out on the YouTube and get it out as soon as we can. But man, I just want to say thanks again. The project Inheriting Manhood is awesome. Everybody go out there on everywhere you find your podcast. Give the guy a review. Give him a 5-star rating if you could. Geez, like I said it before, I even dropped my own rating when I got hip to the project, but I can't believe that it's not more popular than it is. But man, thanks for sharing your perspective, your experience. You know, we appreciate you coming on. Everybody out there, thanks for engaging and coming on the YouTube to leave your comments and dropping your likes and your shares on the Instagram account. So Trent, you got anything else?
No, appreciate you coming on. It was a good time, and it's a lot of important stuff that people need to hear about. So like I think we just scratched the surface here. So yeah, make sure you head over to Nate's channel and check it out.
Yeah. And Nate, anytime you want to come back on, man, you let us know and we'll get you on and hit some more content up because had a great time, dude.
Nah, I appreciate it, man. You guys are always welcome. Every single one of you is welcome on my podcast. You know that. So
nice.
There's not a height requirement or anything.
Listen, if there was a height requirement, I'd be screwed also. So
man, you can't get through one without throwing a shot at the chief.
Can't help it.
Exactly. I always make the joke we're like the evolutionary chart, right? Like chief is down at the bottom and then like there's somebody taller and then like eventually people are walking erect.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, you don't have to worry about me. I'm vertically challenged. So
awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody out there. Train hard, earn each breath. We'll see you.